Well, hello everyone. Welcome to only the second ever C-Suite Collab. For those who are tuned in and don't know me, my name is Dean Carroll and I'm one of the co-founders of C-Suite. It is a new startup aiming to provide a lifetime learning platform for executives and aspirants. Our Collab series of virtual events are an extension of our app, which you can check out at csuite.sg, and that's C-Suite with a hyphen. As a user, you'll be able to view what's happening in the app, and then if you like what you see, you can sign up as a paying member in order to participate in the community. There you'll find great content plus great connectivity. You can even engage in professional matching if you're looking for a mentor, co-founder, investor, board member, and so on. In addition to that, you can create your own content and become a thought leader while also benefiting from the other high-profile members sharing their knowledge. So back to the matter in hand. Today, it is our pleasure to host a panel of some 20 experts, including investors, founders, and disruption experts. In very much a free-form manner, they and you in the audience together will explore the timely topic of disrupt or die, the next wave of startups redefining their categories. We really want to see a two-way dialogue today, so please do get involved with questions from the floor and do vote in our online polls. This is not the traditional event structure. Therefore, if you're a founder, you can even do a 3-minute elevator pitch for your startup. And if an investor wants to match with you, C-Suite will indeed connect you up afterwards. So to be in the mix to get picked, please put your one-sentence startup descriptor in the chat box and we will pick out the most interesting ones. You'll then have 3 minutes to deliver your elevator pitch, and the audience will vote afterwards on whether they would invest. We will then ask the panel for their thoughts on the business too. So before we start, just a quick housekeeping note to say you can submit your questions via the Q&A icon, and we will try to answer as many of them as we can today. Feel free to remain anonymous or leave your name and company there too if you'd like it to be name checked. In addition to that, you can obviously comment and talk to each other in the chat box, but we would just ask that you remain respectful and professional when doing so. Thank you. Okay, so now let's kick off with a question to the panel to get things moving. The last decade saw Uber decimate traditional taxis, Spotify taking out the record companies, Slack replacing email, and the BlackBerry killing iPhone. So what does the next wave of disruption look like in the decade ahead? Why don't we start with the investor and alumna of WhatsApp, Slack, and Facebook, Judy Abad. Judy, hopefully you're in the call now. How do you see the 2020s playing out? Who do you think will win?
Yeah, thanks, Dean. You know, I'm so excited about just the innovation that's happening in general. And I think one thing for me, particularly being in San Francisco, it's really, really neat to see so many other unicorns coming from other parts of the world as well. I would say 10 years ago, if you wanted to start a great company, it almost felt like you had to be in San Francisco. And now that doesn't feel like the case anymore. You see companies in New York, Beijing, London, here in Singapore as well. And I think that's incredible. I'm really generally interested in three things when I think about how I invest and how I frame my own investment thesis. One is the market. Is the market big enough? Are the founders looking to solve a problem that's in a large enough space where whether they become the dominant player or a dominant player, it's going to give great returns back to everybody and have a huge impact on their customers. Two is the product itself. Are we building a 10x better product? Are the unit economics of the product good? Is there any sort of a leaky bucket? Is there a moat for the product? All of those things that you think about when you're trying to just determine whether or not the founders can actually execute on their vision. And then three is execution. And execution, I think, depending on the stage of the company, is really trying to understand what product market fit looks like to them. It's also about whether or not they're hiring the right kind of team. To answer your question, I think one of the biggest trends that I'm looking at today is really thinking through when we are working. We've seen kind of with Slack and with other tools, we've seen a consumerization of the workspace. So we've seen users demand SaaS tools that perform like consumer applications that they're used to. how does all of this change, or what does it look like as we continue to use our phone more and more? And so I would say, if you think about in the 2010s, we've really gotten used to using our phone for so many things. We can edit photos, we can read news articles, we can write things, all of that stuff. But we don't do a lot of the core things that pertain to our day-to-day job on the phone yet. We don't use Google Sheets. We don't make slides. We usually, if we're on our phone, we're emailing people or texting people and kind of just trying to check up on the day-to-day work things. So what I'm really looking for is innovation in like the SaaS tools that we use for work that are key. And how does it keep up with the way that our lifestyles have shifted?
Yeah, really interesting point about how we use our phones, actually. So yeah, that's a new insight, actually, a new way to look at things. Okay, so one sector that has thrived, of course, during the pandemic is e-commerce. So let's ask the Shopback co-founder, Joel Leong, his views. Joel, where will disruption come from, and will big tech just buy up all the great ideas that aren't their own, in your view?
Oh, hey, thanks. So I think that there is always going to be opportunity for new startups to come up. But I think one thing I want to bring out is really on the timing, right? So I think you brought up, like, you need a very good business model to run. But one thing we've noticed, actually, timing is very important. So what do I mean by that? So I think you give an example of like Uber, and actually that seems to be a model that works. However, if you do an Uber model now, it's not going to work because there's already existing competition that's doing the exact same model that is happening, right? So I think one part that I think we're trying to look closer in is really the timing of doing things. And I think there is a time and space for every business model. So some business models were too early for their time, some are too late. For example, if you really want to do some of the models that have already been entrenched by a lot of the players, it will not go through, right? So I think specifically when we look at Southeast Asia, it's actually a market that follows a lot of the trends that come out both from China as well as the US in terms of business models. So if you look at the key unicorns that are growing here in Southeast Asia, a lot of them you can find inspiration or reflection of that model by an earlier unicorn in the US or in China, right? So one thing I think in terms of timing here for Southeast Asia, one opportunity would be to look at models that are growing in those places, especially say in China, and to see whether do they have relevant applications here in this market. One part that I think is important to note is that big tech is even more entrenched, say in China, than in Southeast Asia, right? Because of the stage of digitalization. And if those models can thrive in a market that has two big giants holding on to that whole ecosystem, then actually there is no reason why that model cannot thrive in Southeast Asia as well. So I think that's maybe one lens to look at that, to see are there models that were able to grow out of the ecosystem that even though there were very strong competition or players already there. So that, I think that helps, right? And then the second one is it's unlikely that someone is doing that in Southeast Asia. So how do you localize it? Because there is a small window of opportunity for every business model, in my opinion. And it's about how do you take that correct time to launch it. And if you get the timing right, that's actually the one of the best thing that comes out for a lot of the business models.
Yeah. Timing is definitely key, isn't it? And what you say about China is true, but of course China doesn't have the same restrictions on data privacy and so on that many other parts of the world do, right? So it's kind of a different game and not a level playing field. But we're also joined tonight by David Xing. I think, David, you're based in New York at the moment, I believe, a consultant and former Verizon Digital Profits. David, you used to kind of tour the world doing amazing speeches about what was going on with digital. So what's your disruption prophecy for the decade ahead? Are there any emerging players that you are keeping an eye on right now?
Yeah. Hey, Dean. Firstly, thanks for having me tonight, mate. It's awesome. And thanks for setting this time so it's ridiculous time zone for me and also for Judy. I thought I was the earliest person. Clearly not. Judy, you beat me by about 3 hours, you poor thing. So enjoy the caffeine. There's a comment that I just wanted to follow up. I mean, Joel said something, which is if you're going to do a product, or you're going to launch a company to compete with Uber, it's too late. I would question that, actually, because I would say that the things that I'm watching are the spaces where people become hyper competitive and they create the market also then have a problem with creating, they have this sort of the innovations dilemma, right? They tend to focus on one thing and then they slightly pivot and then they try and focus on just that thing and they lose the focus and sometimes in an area that could extend. So, you know, I would say that, and let me just paraphrase by saying that if Uber just focused just on deliverables and then they'd forget that they're going to go into autonomy and then they choose they want to just go into, say, food delivery, there's an opportunity for some people to even disrupt their category. And maybe that comes from more boutiqueness and less homogenization. And I think that's kind of a complementary. And I think, Joel, you also suggested that towards the end, which makes it feel really interesting. The things that I've been watching, and I was really interested by what Judy's opening remarks were in terms of investment cycle. The thing that I find interesting is, you know, the thing that in the D2C, so the direct to consumer space, that's been really fascinating is that a lot of these brands have built their behemoth wealth based on their social currency. And then when they enter the slipstream of a mature business, they understand that the CAC model of it all is very, very hard to sustain. So they've got to look at more traditional models. So the splintering that I find of somebody that creates one piece of content and distributes it everywhere, that model doesn't work. So what happens because of that is that we're hit with 1,500 media messages per day. So you become overwhelmed and underwhelmed because you can't find what you're looking for. And what I find fascinating just about that is that, you know, things that actually create content in the micro and then understand that it's about deeper engagement. A good example of that is in 2018, the back catalog of iTunes records, well, iTunes catalog outsold new release catalog, which meant people are really fundamentally intrigued by depth. And so I would say, regardless of, you know, new categories are really hard to create. So I see there's more splinters in these categories because particularly when it's hardware, and the things that I'm looking at in hardware is anything that humanizes technology, and obviously with the world of pandemics, there's going to be more of them. And the reason there's going to be more of them is that we just treat the world like it's our living toilet. It's horrendous. And so the technologies I'm looking at are people who are really thinking about how to do that sustainably and how to actually do a better footprint on the world and do better for the world. So it's a broad question, Dean. I'm not going to call out any companies just right now, but I will potentially throughout this discussion call out some that are relevant to the topic. But I do find, so just to paraphrase, I do believe that disruption happens in the micro of a category, not in the macro of a category. Because when we talk about something like wearables, awesome. So what? You know, you wear it for 6 months and realize that, yeah, 10,000 steps isn't really that interesting. If you're a runner, you've already been using Garmin or Polar for the last 10 years anyway. So it's more fad than it is, you know, a value. And when there's 127 products per second being launched in the Internet of Things, it's very hard to stand out. So finding those micro moments and those micro categories for me is where I think that disruption happens in that, because it becomes about passion, it becomes about depth.
Yeah, absolutely. So brand purpose is important, passion's important. Interesting what you were saying about who's going to disrupt Uber, right? I do find myself wondering, when are we going to get the ride sharing aggregator app that has, you know, Uber, Grab, everyone in the one app, and then it's about what brand equity those brands have built up in previous years, right? But anyway, let's ask the founder of the Europea Accelerator, Professor Juan Manuel Revolta Perez, excuse my pronunciation. Let's get your views. Professor, I know, do you see disruption coming from new players or from big tech or even the long life giant corporations that have actually started disrupting themselves in some cases, right? So we've seen Walmart disrupting itself by going big on online shopping. We've seen Disney going big on streaming, you know, which has disrupted its traditional business. What are your thoughts, Professor?
From Brussels, I want to explain our perspective. And it means, of course, disrupt. You need to disrupt, to innovate in a global scale. And for that, allow me to explain, there is a lot of funding from the European Union. I'm talking of the program Next Generation that allows disruptive and innovative companies to come to Europe to create a startup, to receive funding for that, but especially in which fields? Digitalization, all what is linked to blockchain, artificial intelligence, etc. But you have to demonstrate your idea is, you have to compare with other initiatives in all over the world, but you can participate in that, and you have to demonstrate you are the best. The other big pillar is linked to what we call in Europe, this bureaucratic language, Green Deal. It's what is linked to renewable energy, that's quite interesting, circular economy, waste management, water management, and of course, all what is, because of the pandemic situation, all what is linked about bioagriculture, sustainability in agriculture, agri-tech food, and of course, traceability. Consumers is more than open to pay more if you guarantee the origin and where the food comes. Finally, all what is linked to e-health, all what is linked to fighting against COVID-19, or tourism, what is one of the most damaged sectors. In the field of COVID-19, we are talking up to 100% of the projects. We have now some, I want to offer, of course, C-suite, and thank you very much, Dean, for the invitation, and all these panelists we are looking for now, partners out of Europe, as we have in Mexico, for the Startup Europe Awards. What is this open innovation call that facilitates the startups how to access to that EU funding? And we have some open projects in some accelerators, in firefighting, in circular economy for textile. Then if you are in that sector, don't hesitate to contact us, because we have fresh funding, fresh money, smart money to help your company to be accelerated. We are talking for project, it's not difficult to arrive to 2.5 million euros of subsidy and up to 15 million euros as equity from the European Union. More than welcome to Europe. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, it's great to hear about the support that's coming from the European institutions. And, you know, I'd be a conversation for another time, Professor. I'd be interested to know what percentage of that goes to applied, you know, research and what goes to basic research. But we'll perhaps save that for another day. But we have the Tech in Asia reporter, Deepti Sri, is also on the panel tonight, and she reports on change makers every single day. So Deepti, do you envision a new breed of disruptors born from the 5G supercycle and the advancement of artificial intelligence? Is that what's going to be the driving force in the coming decade?
I certainly do believe so. I think that disruption in technology is happening every single day. I think that the Southeast Asian economy is very adaptive, especially the Southeast Asian economy, because I am basically dealing with Southeast Asia, so I can talk about Southeast Asia. I think the economy is adapting to changes that are happening. I think all of this has been majorly accelerated by the pandemic. I think there's a greater need for technological innovation within companies. I think there's a need to monetize better using technology. I think that startups, because of the need to innovate every single time to have an edge over other competitors, you need to make sure that you make sure your margins are better. You make sure you can put your capital to better use. So I think that there have been a lot of disruptors in the past year. I think that a lot of sectors have really turned the table. I think that fintech has been one of those sectors. I also think that the pandemic slowed the economy, and there was a cash crunch, and then there was this need for. I'm very interested in the buy now, pay later segment. I think that's been a solid disruptor. I think that's changed the way people shop today. I think that's changed the way people look at e-commerce. I think that's also led to the e-commerce boom. And yes, I think there's a lot coming on the way. I'm very excited to be seeing all these startups coming up with newer concepts and technology every single day. It's very exciting.
Awesome. Okay, and let's ask a disruptor for their view, an actual disruptor. Barbara Soltysinska, if Barbara's on the call, you founded the influencer agency In The Hash and are arguably disrupting that traditional marketing space. And Barbara, do you think the pace of disruption will be exponential in the coming years? Will it continue in that vein? Is Barbara with us or?
No, Barbara is not with us anymore.
She hasn't managed to join yet. Okay, all right. Well, perhaps she will later, and we can ask her then. Okay, we're lucky enough to have another disruptor on the call anyway, who I can see is here, Damien Cummings. So I'll open up to the panel in a minute to get everyone who has a view on this can certainly chime in. But Hive HR CEO Damien Cummings, you're looking to revolutionize your segment. How do you see this decade playing out for HR?
Well, it's not necessarily about HR, but if you answer the broader question of what is disruption, you need to study history a little. So if you look at the major disruptions, it's really trauma plus desire. So let's go back to World War II. Obviously, massive trauma, but huge military innovations. Rockets were developed, new ways of actually doing things were developed, but that led to the desire that happened afterwards. That technology was then repurposed to actually kind of launch the boom of the international travel age, the dawn of the jet, the dawn of international travel, and that changed the world. And it seems like the greater the trauma, then the greater the desire and the greater the change that comes along with it. And I think in particular, what you've seen with COVID-19 is an obviously deep trauma for the world and deep trauma for many industries. One easy one is the healthcare industry. You know, what you're seeing, which is a requirement to put COVID-19 vaccines between -15 and -25, is going to mean a bit of a revolution in the supply chain industry. Moving things that are sensitive, moving things at different temperatures, moving things in different ways. And what I'm seeing in the HR space is there's now a revolution brought on by the trauma of being forced to work from home, brought on by the trauma of doing things differently, brought on by the trauma of being isolated and needing, help with well-being. And also brought on by the trauma of needing to hire people in a new, better, and different way. So culturally, as well as kind of physically in the environment, we're seeing massive trauma through the 2020s. So what I see is the next big wave of disruption. I'd put my money in healthcare at the moment because that's going to be massive. I'm also betting the farm personally on how to revolutionize the kind of HR tech industry. I think Judy kind of said it very nicely earlier. If you look at enterprise B2B technology, it needs to be consumerized. Nobody loves HR tech. Frankly, it's a bit of a pain in the ass. And if you want to do something new and interesting around that, I don't think the world's going to be dominated by the SAPs and Oracles of the world in the future. It's startups that can take the ease and great user experience of something like, almost like a Facebook or an easy social media interface into that kind of consumerized kind of B2B tech world. Outside of that, I'd also say there's probably a lot going to happen in the next wave of trauma, which is probably going to be environmentalism. And I think a few of the speakers have talked about that. I think we're all pretty aware that, it doesn't look so good for us and maybe doom is around the corner. So if you look at the companies that are saving the world, fixing the oceans, putting in place climate change protocols, you're going to see that massive trauma lead to the next wave. And that's probably 10 to 15 years from now. But I think if I was a betting man or investor, put your money in HR tech and workplace tech, put your money in healthcare and health tech, and to a lesser extent, the industries that support those, because that's where the next wave is coming.
Yeah, definitely the strong segments. Okay, do we have any other thoughts from others on the panel who haven't yet spoken? Was there anyone with a strong view on this before we move to our first poll question of the night?
Yeah, Dean, I think there's a lot of talk about technology and disruption, but obviously disruption is not just pure about technology. And I think, necessity is a great driver, and COVID has been the ultimate necessity for a lot of companies. But if you're not wired to be value-led, and I think that is one of the things that a lot of companies that get disrupted, they're not necessarily disrupted by technology only, but the fact that they were completely form-led. The record industry, the bookstore industry, the combustible engine car industry, which is a form within a form. they've been very focused on the form, which was extrapolated by the fact, or exasperated by the fact, that they're all companies that are driven by amortization versus innovation. And amortization says, I'm going to change something in 3 to 5 years when I've written it off, as against to, I need to take this hit now because I know that I need to deliver better value to a customer. You know, and a lot of times when we're talking about customer experience, it's being translated digitally. But for instance, I've been in the market for a car last year during the circuit breaker, and it was a fantastic experience to see that it all came down to how those companies were wired. Because in the end of the day, you know, the Facebook ads were improving in terms of offers, in terms of sleekness, and you would click it, and then you would be handed over to a traditional sales guy who would call you, and he would say, you clicked Lexus, you're interested in Lexus. Can you tell me more which model? And I said, your digital department didn't hand you off the whole log with all my data to have a really focused conversation. And so that is not anymore about technology, that's about mindset. And I think, you know, that is a part where we will see in the next 18 to 24 months, actually, post-COVID, which companies have been able to shift, which companies have been able to really refocus on the best way to deliver value. And consumers nowadays are voting with their feet, because we see the consumer spending being changed as well. In the past, there was a lot of conspicuous consumption where a lot of purchase power was just, you know, people would try things out. Now consumers are making very different bets. They have a bucket of utility spending, and they have a bucket of passion spending. So I think one of the categories that we have not touched upon, and I agree with Damien, healthcare is an absolute fantastic thing to see, is education. Education is also being majorly disrupted now. You know, why would you pay $50,000, $60,000 to go to an education, renowned education, if you could potentially just select your professors, your topic, your professors, and still get all your credits? And I know people that are working on that space. But the other one is wellness. Wellness, people are really looking into that now as well. You know, health and well-being. You know, that business is taking off as well. So consumers are really changing not only the way they shop, but also in where they spend their money on.
Yeah, agreed. And if anyone wants a podcast recommendation, I highly commend Scott Galloway, and he talks, Dick, very much in a very compelling way about the future of education, and he has similar views to you. So anyone who hasn't checked it out, I recommend it. Okay, anyone else on the panel before we do our first poll question and before we move topic? Was there anyone else who wanted to speak up? Patrick, you raised your hand, I think.
Yeah, Dean and everybody, great to meet you all. I think I'm going to take a slightly different approach, because I think in your introduction to the session, you mentioned how, you know, big monopolies, big tech has kind of really have, you know, owned the surface layer riches. And I think that something that I've become very, very aware of, which is happening in the last year or so, is that actually the cost of tech production has fundamentally dropped dramatically. And a lot of this, if you kind of aren't aware of these things or these tools, is very simply due to no-code tools. And this is meaning that, you know, if I look into, say, any one of our kind of, even an Uber app, instead of it probably costing me $1.5 million, $2 million, $3 million that you build, these days entrepreneurs can go there and actually get that MVP product out to market, probably for around about $20,000, $30,000. And for sure, when it gets to your millions of users, it's not going to work. But in terms of that kind of first step and getting to your first 10,000 users, it's most definitely going to be adequate enough to kind of show kind of investors off the back of that. And I think that people haven't realized how powerful this trend is, but essentially kind of what no-code solutions and bring down the cost of production, of tech cost of production, and actually giving even every single one of us in this call the ability to build apps, and, you know, as a developer would, it's going to lead to a few things happening. I think one is that we're going to actually probably see the emergence of kind of mum and pop, you know, tech emerge. where you're going to go there and see kind of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people say, you know what, I'm quite happy to kind of run a very niche kind of tech product that services 1,000 people, 500 people, and it allows me to actually go there and do a business that does $100,000 a year. And of course, out of those, millions or hundreds of thousands, there's probably going to be the top layer of that who are going to make $1 million and $10 million, and then keep on doubling down with VC funds to go bigger and bigger. I think secondly, from a purely company kind of perspective, this is going to radicalize, how actually kind of companies just go about their daily work. Because now, instead of having to go there and pay software licensing fees to Salesforce or HubSpot or all of these kind of different platforms they're using, or even Google, they can go there and off the shelf kind of build out their CRM systems, their kind of intercompany workflows. And you could argue that Google has been saying they can do this for a long time, and I've tried using Google's tools, and they're difficult to make that happen. But these new no-code tools make it incredibly easy, and Zapier plugs all these things together. So I think that's going to be the second thing where you're going to see companies radically rethink and actually start to hire kind of business operations, business consultants to build out these flows. And finally, I think the disruption of all this, and the VCs can probably tell us better on this, is that the bar to entry to kind of, being a successful startup now is no longer that you can have said, okay, I have this idea and I'm going to be raising a seed fund. Now you have to be saying, well, I've spent $20,000. I've already built this product. I've already gone there and got 100,000 people using it. And now we've got to take our no-code stack and turn it into a real code stack so we can go for the next 1 million users. So I think it's going to completely disrupt the VC industry itself and the funding environment. And they're only going to say, I'll be willing to put my money into businesses if they are already proving incredibly strong kind of traction off the back of that. And for entrepreneurs, they'll say, well, great, it's a $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 bet. So, why not give it a punt? And again, I won't talk anymore, but, to finish this off, to talk about the scale of this disruption and what's going to be happening, is that you can almost imagine kind of the effect of what Amazon Web Services has had on this current wave of kind of startups these days. Because without it, hundreds of thousands of startups simply wouldn't have been willing to kind of go there and invest into server stacks, the technology, the office space that you build out this. But Amazon has fully, by bringing down the cost of kind of server space, has fundamentally allowed all of our businesses today to run. So I think this is the power of this, the power of no code is going to be just as powerful because the cost of production is dramatically dropping and the outcome is going to be absolutely huge from a disruptive force in the ways I mentioned just then.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, with no code, there seem to be people that are really strong champions of it and people that absolutely hate it and no one in between, right? But anyway, let's now ask the audience what they think. And panelists, if anyone has something to say and hasn't spoken up on this issue yet, we can jump back into it. But let's do our first poll question of the night. And the question is, where will disruption come from over the next decade? And the options will be new disruptors, big tech, traditional corporations, or other. So please do get voting. We'll give you about 15 seconds. And panel members, if you'd like to vote as well, please do. Or it's changing. We might give it a couple more seconds. Okay, let's call it there, Crystal. Okay, so 69%. Question is again, where will disruption come from over the next decade? 69% say new disruptors, 24% say big tech. I thought that would be higher. Only 7% traditional companies and 0 for other. Okay, all right. That's good to know. That's good to know. By the way, if you do vote other in any of the polls we do this evening, please do put your other in the chat box there so we can see what your other is. That would be much appreciated. Okay, now a gentle reminder for any founders out there wanting to do your elevator pitch. Please leave your 1-sentence company descriptor in the chat box. And then if it sounds interesting, we will call on you to present. I think people are starting to do that already. So I think we have someone called Sarab, who's involved in a startup that is fintech in healthcare, which in itself sounds intriguing. So Sarah, if you're ready to do an elevator pitch, we can give you 3 minutes. Crystal, if you could enable Sarah to join now. And Sarah, you might need to enable your microphone and your video before you speak.
All right, Sarah is in.
Okay. So fire away, Sarah.
Hello, everybody.
Hello there. Nice to see you.
Thank you. And thank you for giving this opportunity to have the elaborate speech. I, along with my partner, run a fintech in India, which is into the space of healthcare finance. We only fund the healthcare ecosystem. So we have a verticalized approach, but we fund the entire value chain. We have identified very specific problems in the entire value chain, starting from patient financing, where we offer interest-free loans to patients, loans without any interest. We offer cashless claim financing because in India, getting the money from the insurance company by the hospital is a huge challenge. It takes nearly 60 to 90 days to get that money back from the hospital. We do the invoice discounting for hospitals over there. And we also do supply chain financing, where we offer a typical invoice discounting product to the entire value chain of suppliers. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to offer digital lending solutions through a health tech aggregator route. That's a second uniqueness, where we offer to acquire customers using the health tech players who are already deeply engaged with hospitals or service providers or supply chain financiers. As we speak, we launched this company in May 2020 during the pandemic. We already have 6 hospitals onboarded, nearly about 4 to 5 live customers as in terms of hospitals and aggregators with us, and tie-ups with 3 lenders at the back end. That's about my elevator pitch.
Excellent. Well, you did it with 90 seconds to go, so well done you. Great, and that gives us more time to get the audience to vote on whether they would invest in the company or not. So if we could bring up our poll. Crystal, who's our operations manager at C-Suite, is kindly helping with behind the scenes tonight. So audience members and panel members, would you invest in this company now? Yes, no, not sure, maybe in the future are the options. Get voting. We'll give you another 5 seconds or so. Okay, let's call it there, Crystal. Okay, really strong results. So 31% would say yes, they would invest. Only no would say 8%, 27% not sure, and 35% maybe in the future. That's a great result. The last Collab session we did, Sarab, people were happy to get into double figures with the yeses. So well done there. Panel members, is there anyone who has a view on Sarab's company and would like to chime in? Jatin, how about you?
Thanks, Dean. So I think it's a very interesting concept, Saurabh, and there is a huge market for that in India and potentially in other emerging markets where the challenges are the same. So I think, what I wanted to talk about even before Saurabh was pitching was about, to me, one of the real disruptors could be and are happening, especially in Asia, are making things and products and solutions accessible to people who do not ever had that access, whether in healthcare, whether in financial services, whether in education, whether in transportation and so on. So Saurabh's company, especially on the patient side, some of them may not be able to afford from a cash flow perspective some of the treatments if they cannot be financed by by Saurabh's company. So that's really, to me, as a disruptor in that space.
Got it. Okay. Anyone else on the panel with any views before we move on to the next topic? No? Okay. All right then. Well, this has been referred to earlier, but I did write in the intro for this that now the original business ideas are indeed hard to come by, and much like gold or oil, the surface layer riches have already been mined out. So when attempting to disrupt the status quo and redefine or even create a category, what do the panel think should be the approach from founders. And I think if we could start with Helen Maguire, I think Helen's with us tonight, and she is the Diversely.io CEO and co-founder. Helen, why don't we start by you telling us about the problem you're solving with your company and the mindset you adopted when crafting an elegant solution to a pain point?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Lovely to be here this evening, or certainly this evening in Singapore, as you can probably see outside my window. Thanks, Dean. Yeah, so I founded a company with my co-founder also in the middle of the pandemic last year. The company is called Diversely. We are a bias-free hiring solution to help businesses to increase their diversity internally, and also to track and measure their D&I solutions specifically to their bottom line. So essentially to better understand how their diversity inclusion practices and approaches are really paying off and how they can be improved. To give you a very short background into why I started this company, I previously had run a women's careers platform that I founded in the Middle East that I think is probably where Dean and I first connected. I moved over here to Asia. We had some great success, but I felt that the solution was really only sitting in the branches of the problem around diversity, specifically in the workplace. You know, I think where D&I is concerned, for many, many years, it's been underfunded. It's been seen as something of a cost center, and there's certainly been no budget specifically for D&I heads, if that D&I head existed in the first place. My impetus to start Diversely was through the creation of tech. I felt that tech was really going to help to drive to the root of the problem, which lies very much in unconscious bias, not just towards women, but towards many other underrepresented groups in the workforce. And that's really where the journey started for Diversely and the tools and the data analytics that we're creating. And I think, you know, what I would say in answer to the broader question, Dean, is that really it has to come from a passion point. If you want to change something in a particular space, which when I first started 6 years ago was not a trendy space. This was not a hot topic. It was something that I had to go into companies and convince them and sell them on the idea of hiring more women, which is quite unbelievable to say that now, but it's true. You know, it has taken that long for it to come full circle in a way. So you go into it with a real passion, and you go into it, you know, as a reason to get up in the morning, whether or not by the end of the day you've managed to solve anything or not really, is definitely a journey. So I would say, you know, it's never really a money-driven impetus. It's much more around the passion point, and that's really where I would see disruption in, let's say, you know, I guess undervalued sectors, or sectors that don't seem to be experiencing a boom at that particular time would come.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you there. It is, I mean, for me as well, it's all about passion, right? The reason, you know, we started C-Suite is, you know, the founders had worked in, or, you know, were friends with, or acquaintances with people who had worked in toxic cultures where lives had been ruined, right? And, you know, only through leadership training, through having a good mentor, through maybe executive education, you know, you start to get better behaviors. You know, I look back at my career, my early days in management, I definitely wasn't a good manager, right? So it is about a personal journey, and it is about passion. 100% agree there, Helen. Yeah, absolutely. So a brand redefining its category of sports sponsorship is open sponsorship. So I think hopefully joining us from New York, where I believe it's early morning right now, as David alluded to earlier, is Ishveen Anand. Ishveen, my question for you is, how will you stay ahead of other disruptors that might be coming through in the future?
Hi, Dean. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, as you said, I mean, so we're looking at the sponsorship space, and it's interesting because you've already talked a couple of times about influencers or content creators, and I think in today's new disruption, there's very blurred lines between content creation, influencer marketing, digital marketing, Facebook advertising, sponsorship, and all of those things. So one is you can't just look at your own channel. You have to think about who is, who's taking marketing dollars away from you, or who's pulling, who kind of complements or frenemies, so to speak. And then the second thing is, when you're thinking about direct competition, we're very big on not really spending too much time thinking about what they're doing. A little bit kind of what you and Helen were saying about, like, what's your passion point? Why did you get into this? And I think as long as you focus on what you're trying to achieve, it's far better for your own product roadmap, for your own pricing, for your own go-to-market strategy. So a good example of that is we came into it thinking very much about how to make sponsorship more appealing to brands and how to get more brands involved in the platform that we've built. A lot of people come into it because athletes, what we do is connect brands to athletes. A lot of people think athletes is a very sexy category to be in. As a former sports agent, I can vouch for that. And so they really focus on like the supply side and making the athletes happy. And so by sticking to the brand philosophy, we ended up doing things very differently, which I think has led to our competitive advantage right now.
Got it. Okay, really insightful. Thank you for that, Ishveen. Appreciate it. And let me ask a former colleague of mine at the Asian parent, Jatin Dedwani, who is the Growth Partners CEO and founder. Jatin, one of your former gigs was at Rocket Internet, where you were CFO and helped build many startups. In your view, what does it take to redefine a category?
Thanks, Dean. I think, in my experience of almost now 10 years working in different companies and looking at about 30, 40 companies started from scratch or in a scale-up phase, I think the passion of the founders and co-founders is very important. And that actually keeps them going and the team going, especially during hard times, whether it's in terms of product market fit or funding or other crises that comes during the business. The other thing I think, which I found it very relevant for some of my previous companies was the team that you build over the years. Because at the end of the day, you all are a sum of the total team that you are working with, and sometimes even greater. So I think passion, team, and overall persistence is very important, where you shouldn't get bogged down by short-term failures or people not accepting or agreeing to what you are trying to do, because that's really a disruptor where people haven't seen it before, people don't know what it is, and it's just a journey of customer education and persistence. And what Helen was saying, a few years ago, she had to go in and convince companies to do a thing which sounds, like very basic and should be by default happening in many, or in fact, all countries and companies across the globe. So I think those three things are in my experience, kept most of our companies going. And I've seen founders who were having most of these qualities and continued for a much longer time and became successful and had successful exits, which could be one definition of success. And I've seen people who have, left the business or left the company in a span of a couple of years because they just couldn't, go through the whole, short-term failure and rejection and ignorance by the market or investors or even sometimes the team members.
Yeah, okay. 3 is the magic number, fellow founders. Remember that one. Now, to someone who has already achieved a lot in her young career, Regine Chan. She is a McKinsey consultant, World Economic Forum Global Shaper, and startup founder. Regine, what would be your advice to other millennials, or actually you're probably Gen Z, aren't you? What would be your advice to others in your generation looking to change the game?
Yeah, so thanks, Dean, for the question. I think, I see in my generation, there are a lot of student founders, and there's a lot of support being offered by the university in Singapore, like NUS, NTU, and all of these. So I think some advice I'll give to these students is firstly to really tap into all of these resources that the Singapore government and that the local universities has poured into this ecosystem. I think the next important thing is also that Singapore is really growing as a startup hub. So it's very important to. I think there's a great community here, and there's a lot of potential to tap into the wider ecosystem of startups and investors right in Singapore. And I think the last thing that maybe most important for some of these student founders is probably depending on it's probably to do a lot more testing and to do a lot more planning of before they actually launch their startups. And I think this can go quite a long way.
Got it. Okay. And do we have Calvin So on the call? I know Calvin was having problems connecting. Is Calvin with us?
No, Calvin is
not here yet. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that awesome advice from all the panel members there who've spoken up. But let me open up now to the full panel. Is there anyone else who wants to jump in on this topic?
Yeah, hi Dean, I'm Maylin.
Hi Maylin.
Hi everyone. I think I'm hearing everyone talking about solving problems, finding specific issues that exist and finding a solution. I think one of the areas that I think will probably come up is purposeful kind of driven startups and also social impact. I think we all know that, yes, we are going through a pandemic right now, but the aftermath of the pandemic is going to be a real challenge for a lot of people. Unemployment, skills that need, people need retraining, and also people who are financially challenged. I think the giving space is an area that, not many companies have actually looked at enough to kind of push them to the next level. And I think that the next level of startups will be looking at, how to disrupt the traditional way of always doing things in the social giving space, how to make it more efficient and more effective so that the right people are helping the very people who need it and based on their needs. And I don't think that has really been looked at. And I think that there will be a number of players that probably come up in that space. So purposeful and social impact kind of startups.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Okay, great. Listen, we've got lots of startup founders dropping in their descriptors now, so we will come to some more pitches soon. Before we do that, I'd like to, if we can, do our next poll question, which is on the topic we've just been talking about. And the question is, when attempting to redefine or even create a category, what should be the approach from founders? The options are, for the answer, find a new problem, solve an existing problem differently, undercut the pricing of your competitors, or other. And again, if you vote other, please drop your other in the chat box so everyone can see. Get voting now, please. The panel members can vote too, and the audience too. We'll give it just a couple more seconds. Okay, let's call it there. All right, so question again, when attempting to redefine or even create a category, what should be the approach from founders? 4% say find a new problem. That's surprisingly low. 89%, again, another surprise, say solve an existing problem differently. Wow, okay. Only 4% say undercut the pricing of competitors and 4% say other. So do drop your other in the chat box, as I say. That's a really interesting result, actually. I think I'll have to ponder that one a bit more. Okay, so let's call on our next startup founder to pitch. I think we have Neuron which is based on the future of aviation. Do we have the Neuron founder, Crystal?
Yep, just give me a moment.
Okay. Is he or she vanished? We can try another, if so.
Sorry, but could you give me the name again?
Neuron. Yeah. Oh, no, he's jumped in the chat box. Thanks, Niall. Niall Greenwood's Crystal is the name.
I got it. Okay. Noel is promoting. He should be in a minute.
Again, you may need to enable your camera and mic, Niall.
Yep, all good.
Hi, can you see me and hear me?
We can indeed, far away.
Great. I'm promoted to panelist. It's Neil Greenwood. I represent a London startup called Neuron Innovations. We're all aviation experts, carrier captains, air traffic controllers, and drone collision avoidance PhDs, software PhDs as well. And we've come up with a solution for keeping manned and unmanned aircraft safely separated, which is a nirvana that enables the long distance use of drones for all manner of use cases, and for air taxis, which you'll see there's been a huge amount of activity in the sector over the last month or two. I think we've had 4 unicorns created this year. We use sensors, ground-based sensors, and a data fusion technology at the back end to create a see and be seen environment where these aircraft can coexist. We're doing this because of our aviation background, but in actual fact, the technology applies to the whole vehicle, to anything, or vehicles to everything space. We're getting amazing traction. We're in 4 consortia within the UK's Future of Flight Challenge, and all of the big players are very, very keen to work with us. So it's a complex area. It's a technology, people and process-based piece, and it is highly regulated, but we're also represented on all the relevant standards and regulatory committees. So there's a lot to discuss, but in the time available, I just thought I'd put that out there because it's certainly gathering a lot of interest.
Fascinating, and definitely a unique startup. Very, very, very interesting indeed. I'll take a look at. I'll Google you and see what's happening. So let's ask the audience what they think. If we could bring up the poll question, Crystal, on whether people would invest or not. Okay, would you invest in this company now? The answers are possible answers: yes, no, not sure, maybe in the future. And we'll give you around another 10 seconds to vote on this one. Okay. All right, I think we call it there. So again, another really positive result. Would you invest in this company now? 35% say yes, 13% say no. 39% say not sure, so that's a good result in itself too. And maybe in the future, 13%. So well done, Neil. That's a great result. Was there anyone on the panel who had a question for Neil or wanted to follow up on Neuron? If not,
I was struck by the fact that Neil said that it could be applied to any type of vehicle, and I was wondering what kind of traction they're already having with other sectors than aviation.
Yeah, so we came at this as aviators, but then we realized that the technology doesn't need to be limited to this environment. So you can think of certain scenarios. You'll know the Waze app, for instance, where you can avoid traffic congestion, potential accidents, potholes, whatever it may be. I'll give you another scenario. Since we've grown up, and I won't do a straw poll, but we've all probably been involved in some sort of traffic accident where somebody's driven into the back end of us. My car knows when I'm getting too close to the car in front. And if you enable the cars to speak to one another via their sensors, technology can actually prevent that scenario from happening. So that whole thing we've grown up with, just through the use of sensors, is another application of having sensor fields and ensuring, greater safety, which is basically what we're after. If you look at the whole evolution of autonomous cars, it's based on vehicle-based safety, but you also need infrastructure-based safety as well. And when you step back from the problem, how do you put these sensors? These sensors I can fit in the palm of my hand. They're not especially expensive, maybe $1,000 or so, depending on the quality. How do you get those into an environment that needs them? One state in the US has just spent, quite a few $100 million doing this. In actual fact, we've got pre-existing infrastructure in the mobile phone network. So this is just another antenna that fits to the network with another purpose at the back end of our business. And I'd be delighted to share this with anyone who's interested. We've got a very highly evolved commercial model. So the infrastructure providers as third-party providers take something like 60% of the revenue from this service. So it's absolutely of interest for an infrastructure play as it is for operators. And we integrate directly into the manufacturers of the drones or the aircraft and into the ground control stations of the operators as well. So it's a service that's embedded in your software at the software level that now allows you to fly safely, see and be seen, do your business in a way that you can't currently do. So it really is, we believe it's a market-changing technology.
Sounds like a really important product for society. And just to say that Dick, as well as running his own thing, is also an angel investor. And we've got a few investors on the panel tonight. So if any of you on the panel like what you hear from Neil or any of the other startups, let me know and we'll definitely connect you up afterwards. No problem at all there. I think before we move on to another topic, let's just do one more elevator pitch if we can. We have a startup called Blue Economy, I believe, which is aquaculture focused. I don't know, Crystal, if the founder is visible there to you. If you're the founder and you're listening in, perhaps you could drop your name in the chat box, so to make things easier for Crystal, if you're still on the call. No? Okay, well, perhaps we'll come back to Blue Economy at a later stage tonight. There was another startup called Image Machine, I believe. So if you're the founder of Image Machine, if you could drop your name in the chat box there so that Crystal can enable you to do your pitch. Okay, there we go, Marcus Teo. Get ready, Marcus. You'll have 3 minutes.
All right, Marcus is in.
Awesome. Okay, you might just need to unmute yourself and turn your camera on, Marcus.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can indeed, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for this opportunity. So I'm a startup that's currently providing image data sets to AI companies. So as we know that AI has been quite huge in the past few years, and the demand is only going to get bigger. I like what you said about no code, and that's what we are actually moving towards for the field of AI, where people are actually building AI engines using existing frameworks, doing very minimal coding. But what separates their AI is the image data sets and the image data. So right now, the industry is doing a very manual process of getting this image data. Either you have somebody going around taking photos, or you go onto Google and you download the images, and then you have to annotate it, either by drawing a bounding box or labeling the pixels one by one. So my startup hopes to solve this existing problem by automating the entire process of the data collection. So we will sell the companies the image data directly along with the annotations, and all they need to do is to plug in their AI frameworks, and their AI is good to go.
Got it.
So, yeah.
Okay, you've still got another minute if you need it, Mark.
Okay, sure.
If you're done, you're done.
Okay, so what separates us from from our current standards, it's not just speed, it's also in terms of quality. Because if you look at some of the image data annotations like segmentation, somebody has to manually adjust every single pixel in the photograph. So according to current industry standards, even for high quality data sets, the accuracy is only about 96%. So if let's say there's 100 pixels of an object in the image, a human can only get about maybe 96 of them correct. But our advantage is that we can get all 100. Yeah, because ours is done by a machine rather than a human.
Got it. Okay. Great stuff. Right. Let's move things along and see what the audience thinks of Marcus's image machine. If we could bring up the poll question now and allow people to vote, that would be fantastic. Okay, there we go. So would you invest in this company now? The options are yes, no, not sure, maybe in the future.
Hey, Dean, can I ask a real quick question on that? Hey, Marcus,
Sure.
It's Shingy. Let me paraphrase this. You take a 2D image and you generate a 3D image. Is that correct?
No, we use 3D models to generate a 2D image.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Let's stop the poll there, Crystal, if we could. Okay, another good result. The yeses are in double figures easily at 21%. 21% also say no. 38% not sure. 21% maybe in the future. Okay, so still a good performance there. Was there anyone on the panel that wanted to jump in on image machine before we move on to the next, which I think is probably going to be the final topic because we're wrapping up at 9:30.
I just want to have a quick question, if you don't mind, Dean.
Yeah, sure.
So Marcus, in terms of working on, hi, Jatin here. So in terms of, the implementation or working of this, so does it come as an API or some kind of a plug and play feature with the existing tools of AI or the programs of AI? How does it work for a company who wants to use it?
So we haven't developed an API yet. So how it works is that you will tell us, for example, we want 1,000 images of a wheelchair. Along with the annotations. So we will provide you this 1,000 images and we'll charge you the price accordingly.
Okay, got it. Clear. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
All right. Okay then, if we're done with the panel on that topic, let's move on. So far we've talked a great deal about the positive potential of the 2020s. However, some government leaders are predicting that the pandemic will stretch on for half a decade, maybe more. Therefore, it would be interesting to see whether the panel feels COVID-19 will continue to amplify the pace of disruption, or whether the resultant economic downturn may be so great as to derail technological progression. So why don't we start with Dick Van Motman, the Young Ventures founder and chairman. Dick, if the pandemic stretches to 2025, what do you think will happen both to the pace of disruption and the global economy? Your mic is muted, Dick. Yeah.
I would not be sitting here if I knew the answer to that, probably. The interesting thing is, of course, there have been opposing forces at play for a long time. On the one hand, we have a rising world population. On the other hand, we have all kinds of technology that are productivity improvement led. Robotics, AI, machine learning, all that type of stuff. And we already had platform technologies happening, and they're now on steroids, as we all see, the stock prices of all these tech giants are going through the roof, the usage is going through the roof. And so if the pandemic would last another couple of years, you would basically see accelerated changes in a lot of sectors, leading to accelerated layoffs companies being obliterated. So I think you would see a big slaughter field in that area. And so that's where politics and all that comes in. So, I think we just can see this through the lens of technology or disruption. There's a lot of other things that come into play. If the pandemic would last that long. Now, having said that, I'm always a true believer that we have been in the adaptive economy for a long time, and what COVID is telling us is that adaptation and all these opposing forces that are at play are leading to the fact that it's not just companies but individuals that need to be adapted, and the governments and all that type of stuff and education need to be geared towards that. If you really want me to play this out, I could see a scenario where certain technologies actually need to become public utility to empower the gig economy, to empower that everybody can provide value in a different way to each other. Yeah, but that's going off in a very broad tangent. But you asked me with that horizon of 2025, if the pandemic lasts that long, you will see a lot of seismic decisions need to be taken. I think there will be nationalism coming in. I think a lot of protectionism will come in, and the role of technology and tech giants will be only further scrutinized.
Yeah, and that's thought-provoking when you talk about tech being a public utility. I mean, the internet is definitely a public utility, right? But it's the real estate is all owned by the private sector behemoths, so it's a very interesting debate actually, which could be a session in itself.
But I think economy, smaller economies, smaller countries like Singapore, if they were to go and say it's like, hey, you know what, we're going to redefine what public utility means, and we're going to have these and these technologies being licensed and cover that with tax or whatever and make it freely available, next to having a lot of reschooling projects for the population. That's what I think would be very interesting if the pandemic lasts that long, next to the fact that that type of thing anyway needs to happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think the progressives will win. The progressive nations will win on that front. Mutia Adriana is with us. She's the STEB Asia co-founder and CEO. Mutia, you're building a business effectively in a downturn, which, the analysts say the best businesses are built during a downturn. How confident are you about the decade ahead, Mutia? Is Mutia there? I know she was here earlier.
So I was on mute. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share things with all the great expert panels. And yeah, it's been a very exciting and challenging times for me to start something from scratch again in the middle of the pandemic, which was in August. And I have to adjust quickly to everything. And the main reason why I did this was because when you were, I've been working for like a much bigger company before, managing the whole team, and then I couldn't see like the flexibility of doing more like disruptions or like this kind of like innovations, because there's quite a lot of like high hierarchy, and therefore like it's better to have my own ventures and then do everything as what I think would work for the company. And therefore, what I'm seeing here is actually a very satisfying result so far, because I'm trying to make it more, because it's such a young age, and then all the team are very young, and Indonesia is very dynamic. It's a developing country. There's a lot of like disruptions that you can do in the market. There's a lot of opportunities. A lot of traditional companies where you can actually help them to build more like more innovations in that company. So a lot of potential clients for me, and therefore so far it's been going very well, even like better than I expected before. In the beginning, I was a bit like more trying to be more realistic with the current conditions. But then when I'm seeing like this slow tractions that builds up, especially towards the end of the year, where people are just like, okay, let's just do it. Let's just don't get beaten up by this pandemic. We need to stay strong. We need to rebuild up the economy and everything. And that's where my confidence also and the team's confidence are getting stronger. And then we believe that we can do better for the next decades.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. Okay, and other end of the spectrum, Martin van der Bos, you are the Bright Digital founder, and your illustrious career dates back to the early 1990s. So with COVID-19,
mid 80s, I'm afraid to say.
Oh, is it? I didn't want to be rude. So with COVID-19, are we facing an economic tsunami, the likes of which you've never seen before in your career? I guess we are, right?
It's interesting. And I have to agree with Dick. I mean, if we knew the answer to that, we wouldn't be sitting here. But to be honest, I've gone through quite a lot of different downturns, international upheavals, economical meltdowns, etc., etc. And at the start of it, or even before it, it's all doom and gloom, and everybody thinks it's the end. And human beings are fascinating creatures because we are massively adaptive, and we will find a way. And I think it's the same with this. What it's going to do is it's going to change things dramatically. And I actually, being here in Singapore, I think I'm actually in one of the best places I could be right now, because I see that the smaller communities, the smaller countries, the countries that are more agile are going to be the ones that come out swinging from this one. The big countries, and we're seeing examples all over the world at the moment, the more established economics, they're struggling because changing course in these environments takes so much effort, whereas smaller, more adaptive economies can be much more agile, and they can come on top. So yes, there's going to be disruption. Yes, there's going to be an economic downturn. But I also think that it's going to be a massive power shift in the world where, the big boys are no longer going to be dictating everything. And it's actually the smaller countries that are going to come up and start guiding everybody along. And I think Singapore is one of the prime examples. I mean, just the way they've been handling this pandemic is just amazing. And I do want to highlight one thing. I mean, we've talked about disruption in healthcare, in logistics, in all kinds of different industries. I don't think we're really talking about the education sector enough. Education is going to change massively after this disruption. It will never be the same again. And actually, I think the whole way we educate kids is going to have to change anyway. Because the world is changing very, very fast right now, driven by the pandemic, and education needs to change. It needs to be adaptive. And I see it in my own kids. My son, basically, he already dropped out of school way before COVID because he was just not interested. And I wasn't planning to pay a lot of money for him to sit there, do nothing. And he's finding his own way. And with the digital transformation that everybody's going through right now, he has that power. He can sit at home and actually pick and choose what he wants to study, pick out training courses, pick out certifications he wants to do, and basically create his own qualification because he has a goal in mind, what he wants to do in the next 5 to 10 years. And one of the most interesting questions I always ask all my friends, who are, my age, when I went to school, when I studied, does that even connect to anything that I'm doing today? Has it actually helped me to get to where I am right now? And actually the answer 9 out of 10 times is no, that you have to do re-education, re-study, retraining, learn new skills, learn new ways to deal with the environment that you're in. And that is something that I want to make sure kids get nowadays, is that they become agile, adaptive, and not saying, oh, I'm going to study this subject because in the next 30 years, this is what I'm going to be doing. Because that's just not reality anymore. And the gig economy has been mentioned a couple of times. That is reality. We're going to have to basically figure out a way, how can we add value to our environment, to our community, and be a part of that community. And the gig economy is the way to go forward. And that's, again, why I'm saying smaller and more agile environments are the ones that are going to come out swinging in this one.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And yeah, I think you're the second parent this week to say to me that their kids see a real opportunity cost of going to school and would rather make their own way. And the other parent was incredibly relaxed about it as well. So definitely a trend there. And interesting what you said about agility in terms of agile countries. So that brings me on nicely to the next speaker that I want to call up, who's Patrick Searle, who's the GetCraft CEO and co-founder. Patrick, you're based in that incredibly agile digital nomad hotspot that is Bali. What is the sentiment like there among, and I know Mutia, I think you're in Bali too. So what is the sentiment there, Patrick, like among said digital nomads in terms of the pandemic's effects on technological and economic change?
So I think from a digital nomad perspective, I think everyone knows the cliches. And yes, they will talk a lot about juice fasts and no-code tools and everything else, etc. So I won't talk too much about that. I think what I have found absolutely fascinating in especially Bali is that there has been a flight of the rich, and people who I would expect to be in Singapore or be, and basically very successful kind of CEOs, founders, kind of high net worth individuals. I'm absolutely amazed and blown away by kind of the breadth and depth of the community that has kind of grown here in the last few months. And there's been actually an inflection even during the pandemic. There's been, unfortunately, people arriving from all around the world to kind of find safe harbor in Bali, where they can kind of go there and push this out. So what that's basically leading to is, on one side, you have this very kind of quite wealthy bed of rich individuals and often kind of successful CEOs, co-founders who decided to move here. And the other side, you have this kind of very high quality group of entrepreneurs who are starting, I think, to look to their local surroundings because there's kind of more funding in the area, and realizing that actually there is business going forward. And I'm going to put my, I'll put my hat in the ring. And I think that Bali is really taking off at the moment. And I think you're going to see it have some very interesting impacts over the course of the next 5 years in Southeast Asia. So yeah, it's a very exciting time actually. And the last time I felt this was in Shanghai. And that's similar kind of wave of disruption happening there. So interesting times when you marry capital, when you marry very young, highly motivated, highly skilled professionals together. And yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting as we go forward. Plus, yeah, with work from home culture, a lot of people are choosing to move here. Even big businesses choosing to move their employees here. So yeah, interesting days.
Good recipe, yeah, good recipe for success. Okay, and now to the 2025 founder and angel investor, Mike Moore. Mike, your new company is all about the opportunities that will emerge in 5 years from now. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dean. Thanks for inviting me to participate on this. I mean, yeah, we set this up during the course of last year. We've got 2 partners, one in Japan and one in the US. And it's essentially a transnational advisory that specializes in business transformation, taking a 5-year view of the world and essentially looking at business transformation through kind of 3 key drivers: ethics, culture, and how that would drive the transformation of businesses and brands. I think it sort of came from really a couple of things. Friends of one of our good friends is the global creative president for Fast Retailing, excuse me, which owns Uniqlo. And he was saying, I mean, obviously Uniqlo has had its own issues during the pandemic, but he really made the point for us that there really is a new urgency for all business. I mean, really extraordinary urgency. So if you take the retail sector, for example, 70% of existing retail businesses right now within the retail sector, they are expecting will not survive the pandemic. So I think there's an urgency out there, but there's also a real general need to offer positive perspectives over the next 5 and 10 years into the changes we're experiencing. There's too much disinformation, there's too much misinformation, and information sort of poorly organized. And it's causing, you know, a lot of confusion, a lot of paranoia and pessimism. And I think, you know, there is a time for great positivity. And I think a couple of the previous panelists were alluding to this. Really, I think what will help, what you will see over the next 5 years in particularly, is a receptivity to innovation that transforms. You know, COVID-19 is creating unprecedented social, economic, political challenges. And they're really, people are around the world are having to completely change their lifestyle. I don't mean just lifestyle, but style of life. And, you know, it's not just been an internet virus, it's been a biospheric virus. And that means that, you know, minds have been altered, opinions have been changed, and, you know, attitudes have adjusted. And I think, you know, whilst we're talking about sort of future business and understanding what people really want and need, rather than, you know, hoping they will want and what you want or make or do. One of the things that I haven't really heard much about today is trust. And, you know, trust is something that is really been put in the spotlight through this whole pandemic. And ethics, I think, certainly we believe at 2025, are critical to trust and will form the foundation of any ongoing business, let alone any new business. And really the ethics of the past, I think it's pretty clear to see, are, you know, insufficient to solve the challenges of the future. So I think, you know, many of the traditional institutions are failing to impose moral or ethical standards. So it's going to come down to, I think, businesses to basically act as the glue for, you know, how businesses can transform going forward. And whilst product performance may be the key to success, it's only really if the customer wants what it means as well as what it does. So really ethics and trust are going to be very much at the core of what we can see going forward for businesses as well as, frankly, governments.
Yeah, so brand purpose needs to be married with utility, product utility in a way, doesn't it? Going forwards, definitely. Really, really good insight. Yeah. Right, Mei-Lin Wong is the former Zillearn CMO and now a Live on Purpose advisory board member. Mei-Lin, how confident are you of continued societal progress in the next decade?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that. Can you repeat that question?
Yes, sure. I was saying, how confident are you of the continued societal progress in the next decade?
Do you think
things will get better, basically?
I think when you think about the consumer, will it get better for them? I think it really depends on which side of the fence they're at the moment. I think as a consumer being so affected by COVID-19, things like, you know, travel, that's not going to get better in the near future. I think there's a lot of desires that's going to be suppressed for now. But things like, you know, things that they used to do in a store is probably going to come into their home. So, you know, is that going to be better for them? I think maybe yes. When I think about, you know, me being a pet owner, having a vet come over to my house to look over my pet when she's sick, I think that makes my life a lot easier and better. For business owners, I think small, medium, you know, enterprise business owners, it's going to be tough for I'll say the next few years. And, you know, they need to kind of reinvent themselves really quickly if they haven't already. You know, I think, and also retail, it's probably going to be quite a different scene post-pandemic. Even now, you know, people aren't shopping as much. So I think that, you know, when you think about whether society is going to get better, I think it's going to be yes and no. I don't think that anybody can kind of foresee whether it's going to get better. Certain areas, you know, certain businesses are making things better. So, for example, in the edtech space, I know that when I was in the edtech company, the startup, you know, we were making things a lot easier for creators, for example, to share their learning content and also sell their content. And there are demands for information like that and content like that. In the giving space that I'm in now, definitely there is no huge transition of technology in that space. So we're seeing, you know, I'm starting to see and also hearing conversations of people wanting to make it easier and better for, you know, the challenged individuals in society to get what they need quickly and better and more efficiently. So I think there are segments where it's going to get better, and there are segments that are probably not going to, not seeing huge, you know, drastic changes just yet. So yeah.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that. And someone who's in the kind of vanguard of you know, change is the Datarama CEO and co-founder Rafael Balzi. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Rafael, you're in the business of data mapping and artificial intelligence. You know, what's going to happen with the AIs over the next 10 years? Are you expecting great things, or, you know, is Elon Musk right that we're summoning a demon?
Oh, well, I guess he's right. The demon is not coming so soon, I think. We've been, I mean, at Datarama, what we do is we use NLP, natural language processing, a lot, right? And this is still in its infancy. So there is quite a few years to go before a computer can replace a human analyst to do the type of work that we do. Having said that, it's a tool that helps the human to be more productive and to produce better work. But I don't know if AI is going to take over the world like an alien and you know, take over human in the next 5 years. That wouldn't be my primary concern, to be honest. Like a few of the topics that we, you know, touched upon earlier are much more concerning to me. Of course, COVID, but also geopolitics that goes with COVID. If we can go back to that, you know, like we have an example with the Spanish flu. It happened exactly 100 years ago, and we saw where that led. And yes, the solution to COVID would be more collaboration between people of the world. But what we see is exactly the opposite. Borders are closing, and that limits innovation, it limits disruption, and it makes the world an even more dangerous place than it was before.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's Probably a good juncture to wrap on this particular topic. Yeah.
Just the conclusion is that I think humans are a bigger danger to human than AI is.
Yeah. I think you're probably right. Yeah. Well, listen, just to map out the next few minutes, because we are going to run short on time soon. We're going to get the audience to vote on this particular question, and then I know Calvin and Barbara have now joined the call, and they weren't able to earlier. So I'm going to open up to them just to see if they've got any final thoughts on disruption or any of the other topics that we've been through tonight. And then we'll get one more pitch in if we can. There's a biotech company, IRE Biotechnology, which sounds super interesting, a science-based biotech startup. So, you know, what better time to talk about that? So if you're the founder, if you could drop your name in the chat box there so Crystal knows who you are and to enable you to come on the screen in a few minutes. So before we do that, and we'll also give all the panelists the opportunity to come back on this topic or any others they want. If someone wants to talk about Clubhouse or AI or, you know, Chinese tech dominance, we can do all of those things, but we're going to wrap up at 9:30 sharp so everyone can go and get some lunch or dinner depending on where you are in the world. So let's jump to the final poll question then. Will COVID-19 amplify or slow the pace of disruption? The options are amplify, slow, or other. Again, if you vote other, please drop the reason in the chat box. So let's get voting. We'll give it another 10 seconds. Well, overwhelming results so far. 96% saying amplify. All right, let's call it there. I don't think it's going to change much. Wow, so people are optimistic, I guess you could say, about the pace of disruption, assuming you think disruption's a good thing. 97% say disruption will be amplified. Only 3% say it will be slowed, 0% say other. Okay, so Calvin, we haven't had any creative director minds on so far tonight. Are you there? Do you want to wax lyrical on anything? Okay, maybe Calvin is not with us. He was texting me to say that he was, so maybe something happened to his connection. No problem.
He had his hand raised for a long time, and yeah, I think he left.
Right. Okay. All right. How about Barbara? Barbara, are you with us now?
Yes, I am. So maybe I'll add a couple of points from my point of view. So I think COVID won't only amplify the digitalization, but it will also bring it will democratize many important things in our lives. So I think location won't matter that much because of abilities to participate in different events like this one. So we are in different locations. I am right now in Dubai. Many of you are in Singapore. We are able to connect and talk, and it's normal. Of course, Zoom was not founded in 2020, but not that many people were using Zoom and were organizing events online, and not that many people wanted to participate. So I think that thanks to that, we'll have much better access to knowledge and even network. At the same time, I think in the near future, it will completely change the way we look for talents. It can also bring some challenges in terms of payments, because some countries are more developed, some countries are less developed. But I think that also, I wanted to touch one more point that I'm not sure if this has been discussed before or not, how it will change, how it is changing social interactions. Because on one hand, we get used to working remotely, we get used to staying at home, and also we limited many interactions we were having, the face-to-face interactions. At the same time, it was the best year for TikTok. Also, Clubhouse had fantastic launch with a great product in the right moment. I think only because people really want to talk and connect somehow. But those relations are different, and they will never be exactly same as face-to-face contact. And I think that in terms of social interactions, it's an amazing opportunity for many startups to find a way to connect people. If we look at social media right now, but in terms of how we work, I think I can't imagine building a company right now from scratch without ability to meet with people. And maybe it's my limited imagination, probably. But even though we as the company, we are really adapted to remote work, we have always been, but at the same time, building the culture, we were able to meet with each other. And right now, in many countries, it's just impossible. So I'm very curious how it will be for entrepreneurs in the near future who are just starting the journey, because I think this would be also another challenge. But I definitely think we are living in probably most interesting times since Second World War, with amazing number of opportunities, especially in tech.
Yeah, thanks, Barbara, and appreciate that, and appreciate you raising Clubhouse, because, you know, just to be zeitgeisty for a second, I'd like to ask anyone on the panel who has a view what they think of this new audio chat app, because myself, I can't decide if it's a gimmick or the future or something else. Shingy, maybe you have a view on that, and anyone else?
Yeah, Dean, I'd love to. Thanks for calling that out. I think it's fascinating. It feels a little bit like you're a kid in a candy store, with whether it's Clubhouse or whether you're with Spoon or any of the others, because there's a ton of them. There's a plethora of them. The way the Clubhouse did it by being closed is pretty quite sort of groundbreaking, and just getting the right people in there at the right time. But it feels like MySpace of, you know, bloody early 90s, which, Martin, you might be able to remind me about. Martin, how old is your kiddo that decided to leave school, by the way?
He's 17. He'll turn 18 this year.
Yeah, here's what's also really interesting. You know, I've said for a long time that, you know, we're educating kids on jobs that don't exist, which is fascinating. So we're absolutely there. And as long as diversity, which Helen talks about, is sort of taught to kids as young as 3, which is happening in places like Australia, where, you know, I think education is going to be really interesting. But back to Clubhouse, it's an education space. What you will find, guys, as you go to those rooms, though, the thing that I find, and I do a regular there for Forbes, what's fascinating is that a lot of the people in the groundswell of those rooms are all, you'll notice that in their profile, they're either a coach or a mentor, or, you know, they're kind of they're basically the entrepreneur of one, or the brand of one, and they're seeking themselves. So they're not necessarily people who are, they all want to have a voice, but at the same time, they're also trying to find it. And it's fascinating to me that I think what it'll do, it will go through its innovation curve of adoption. Yep, absolutely. And then it's going to tail off, because what will happen there is that people will say that they spend 20 hours in those rooms and they're fatigued, but then trying to figure out what the model might be. And at the same time, nobody's really monetizing it. So new sponsorship models will come out of it, which I think are fascinating. There'll be some sort of sponsorship layer that'll be layered across that. So whether it's mini donations or some sort of payment system, because there's tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of time that people spend in it. But the value exchange is kind of a little bit off. But I think, like any platform that has longevity, it'll find its common ground and it'll start to settle. But all the competitors are going to, you know, land rush. You know, Twitter's already launched something that's a bit rubbish. You know, Facebook are going to get into the game. Anybody who's in the space is going to go, wow, okay, audio is important. Why is audio important? Because the average person in the US listens to 4 hours of audio outside of music anyway, so we know it's there. But the power of the voice, as opposed to the visual cortex that we've been dealing with for the last 20 years, is going to be brand new. And that, I think, is going to be amazing, Dean. So for me, I would throw it into absolutely, it's awesome, but it's just, I just add it to the stockpile of all of the other stuff that you have to stay on top of. And you use it as a secret weapon. I don't think it's something that you're going to spend 20 hours a day in front of, in my mind.
Yeah, I agree. Although some people are doing that. I mean, here in Singapore, I mean, I know people that are getting up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. to hear discussions going on in the US, you know, live. So, Judy Abad, you've worked for some of the very prominent tech players. What do you think of Clubhouse?
Yeah, Shinyi, thank you for your thoughts. I thought so interesting the way that you've been analyzing and thinking about the space. I would say with Clubhouse and just social networks in general, there are two things that are very incredibly difficult to do well. One is scaling quality as the network itself gets bigger. So I think one thing Clubhouse has been able to do well is by keeping it closed and referral based, you know that somebody knows somebody else reasonably well, and they're bringing that person in, and the content quality and the types of rooms that are then surfaced to you are ones that you can be reasonably assured have some interest. Two is on the integrity issue. So having worked at WhatsApp and at Facebook, I think one of the things that you start to see is governments pay a lot more attention to the apps that their people use once those things get big. I mean, with Clubhouse, you've already seen it banned in China. But certainly at WhatsApp, because it was an encrypted app, we ran into a lot of issues with governments, with local policymakers and police enforcement around how people were using the platform. And not to take this to too dark of a space, but you know, you can think about if somebody was trying to run a child trafficking ring on WhatsApp, what is the responsibility of the app to help the government find those? And I think you will find people on both sides of the discourse saying, absolutely break every privacy model you have and get these people to the police. And then people saying privacy is privacy. If it's encrypted, you don't look at the content. And I think Clubhouse will see some of those issues too, because if you extrapolate to what could be the worst of the internet, if people started creating rooms around content like this, what do? Do you shut them out? Do you shut them down? Do you give them the access to do this? Is free speech still an unregulated right on the internet in that sense? But I think on the positive end, one of the things that I love about what I'm seeing in this space is just how it gives creators the access to actually develop an audience or to kind of pursue their passion. And it isn't just celebrities or like the huge macro influencers, it's anybody. Anybody can come in, you can start a Clubhouse room, you can go on TikTok and you can make a viral video. It's not necessarily easy to get a lot of traction, but you can go and do that. And I think there's an investor in Silicon Valley, Li Jin, who coined the term passion economy. But what I think is so fascinating about the way that people think about school or working these days is that you can actually go and do something that's really, really niche and focused on one thing that you love. And how do you actually build an income or a lifestyle around that? And then what are the tools that you need that look different from what traditional businesses may be using in order to monetize and to actually, you know, generate your income?
Got it. Yeah. All salient points. Yeah, absolutely. And let's ask Deepti Shri. Deepti, I'm sure you've probably written about Clubhouse in the last week or two, haven't you? Is Deepti still there? No?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. I'm sorry, it's slightly dark. It's really late over here.
No problem.
So I think that Clubhouse is a great platform and it's all the rage right now. I think that it's a great platform if you want to be speaking out there. I think not so much for listening, but it's great to like just put your thoughts out there. And I think you can have like you can have a variety of people talking on one platform. You probably might not see the same combination of people on any other chat box. The kind of inputs you get is very interesting. I think accessibility is one issue on Clubhouse, but apart from that, I think it's definitely going to go places. I think we'll hear a lot of news about Clubhouse in the coming days, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're right, when you see the audience, the quality of the members, your kind of jaw hits the floor is quite something. Are there any contrarian views on Clubhouse? Anyone who hates it? Must be one person out of 20, surely. No? How about Mike? Mike, what do you think of Clubhouse? Are you on there?
I just got invited by a friend of mine yesterday, and no sooner had I accepted than I saw there was an issue in Thailand where it was basically being coming under scrutiny for well, what would be deemed somewhat difficult messaging in a country that obviously has very strict rules around that. So I haven't had a chance to try it out. I thought the comments earlier were quite insightful, and you know, a lot of these things, these platforms. You know, you get a lot of early adopters, but I think going back to the, you know, and they become very popular very quickly. I think to the point earlier on that we've got so much information coming at us. There are so many channels coming at us. It really is very challenging sometimes to sort out, what is real and genuine versus, what is fake. To use something that has been overused over the last, certainly the last 4 years. I think it does really come back to the whole issue of, can you trust the channel that you are on? Can you trust the messaging that you are hearing? And is it responsible and ethically responsible for the world that we are all living in? I think everybody's just tired and exhausted of hearing stuff. They don't really know whether it's a personal platform or a corporate platform for the sake of it just being that, as opposed to something that is really going to help people figure out a way forward in a positive way in an environment that is, extremely challenging for many people. Yeah. And so it's not exactly do I love it or hate it? 'Cause I haven't used it yet, but I just thought that the fact that the day after I signed up, you get the news popping up from Thailand isn't a great sign.
Yeah. I mean, I'll see you on there when you become active. But yeah, my problem with coming back to one of the points you made is my problem with it is it doesn't sort the signal from the noise for you. So it's up to you to put in a lot of time to kind of navigate it and find the gold, and potentially you can spend hours looking for it, right? But
well, the problem there you've got is exactly right. I mean, I saw something yesterday that Fox is planning to open up a new channel in the UK that will be very similar to its channel in the US, and you're like, it's the real opportunity for trust, ethically responsible organizations, news companies, businesses is now, and those will be the ones I think that really survive over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, the gatekeepers definitely still have their value, don't they? Let's, all right, brilliant. So thank you so much for that panel. Before we wrap up, just want to allow Christoph Melcher from IRE Biotech, which is the company I referenced earlier, to do his elevator pitch. And then we'll wrap up for the night and say good night or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. So, Crystal, if we could enable Christoph to have his 3 minutes in the sunshine.
Yep, he's in. Christoph just have to unmute himself.
Are you there, Christoph? You might be on mute still. Oh, there you are. Can you speak so we can see if your mic is working? No, I think you're on mute, maybe. Oh, there you are. Yeah, we can indeed. So go for it, Christoph. You have your 3 minutes.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me with the microphone? Yes?
Yes, you might have to hold it there, but we can.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. My name is Chris from IRE Biotech. We are registered in Taiwan right now, but we are actually on the move to China. And as I wrote in the introduction, the pain points that we are addressing are rather big. Metabolic diseases like diabetes and obesity, neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's diseases and others, and various forms of cancer. These are rather big health epidemics, and the totally available market size should be obvious by now. The solution that we have, what we want to contribute, is an endogenous protein that our body is making already, just not enough of it. These proteins are called metallothioneins, and I would love to go into the science, but no time for that. There is some 60 years of academic science on these proteins, and there are literally more than 12,000 science publications on this stuff. And the molecular functions are proven up and down, left and right, again and again. most interestingly, I hope, for the biotech sector, our R&D is done. You all know that R&D in biotech, that's where the money goes. We have
last 30 seconds, Christoph.
Okay. What we need right now is an investment of about $3 million so that we can do the mandatory safety studies and get FDA approval to scale up the production process with our designated production partner, and then to prepare the marketing, public relations, and the product launch. Thanks for your attention.
Brilliant. Okay, there you go, Mike. That's certainly brand purpose for you, isn't it? Okay, great. Let's see what the audience thinks then, and the panel can vote. If we could bring up the final poll of the evening. Okay. So, would you invest in this company now? Yes, no, not sure, maybe in the future. Those are the options. We'll give you another 10 seconds. Okay, 5 more seconds. All right, let's call it there. Okay, all of the startups have done pretty well tonight. So, yes, say 33% they would invest. No, only 4% say they wouldn't invest. 46% not sure. 17% maybe in the future. Fantastic. Okay. Well, does anyone on the panel have a question or comment for Christoph? No? Okay. True. Sorry, what was that?
It's late already.
It's late already. Well, it doesn't. We've got quite an international crew here, so it could depend on where you are in the world. For some people, it's still early. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, guys. Before I wrap up and do my outro, was there anyone on the panel who wanted to chip in on a disruptive issue that we didn't touch on tonight, or there's an issue you feel strongly about that we didn't get to? Now's the opportunity to take the platform and say your piece. Professor Wan, you have your hand up there. Go for it. You're muted, by the way.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. I fully agree about that. After this COVID-19 will be an explosion of the positive values about innovation and disruption. We can see with this enormous effort for the vaccines. Also, I would like to highlight the importance of to be disruptive, not just in technology, but in the new business model. And also, we have to take care about the legal framework. In a lot of, we have to, in our experience, interesting startups, they don't take in consideration the importance of the industrial protection, patent, etc., or in the field of artificial intelligence in energy, for example. What about the new potential from prosumers, producers of energy, consumers of energy? For that, we have to understand where are the legal barriers, administrative barriers. I'm talking for the techno people, for the engineers, taking into consideration the future legal umbrella. What, at least in Europe, what we have, and is for free, you can Google that and looking for that, what will be the future legislation. And did you know that the environmental legislation, what was the connection with digitalization? I'm talking of traceability blockchain. In Chile, is copy-paste from the legislation from the European Union. And it can allow to us to see where is the future. Let's be optimistic, because after this COVID-19 will be an explosion in tourism and in the positive values of the need of innovation. Thank you.
That's a wonderful positive note to end on. So let's do that. So thank you so much, Juan. Appreciate that. So on that note, we're sadly out of time. A big thank you to our esteemed panel for giving us so much of your valuable time today. It's been an absolute bonanza of knowledge for me and for all those that have tuned in as well, I'm sure. For the audience, we will be announcing our next event soon. So do keep an eye on the web app at csuite.sg to find out more, and that's C-suite with a hyphen. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn to get updates about what we have coming up. Also, please drop me an email at dean@csuite.sg, C-suite with a hyphen, if you have any feedback on tonight or indeed on anything C-suite related. For now, though, all that's left to do is to thank our esteemed guests one last time. So thank you, everyone. And let's give them some virtual applause and say goodbye. So more from us soon. Bye for now, everyone. Thank you, panel. You've been awesome. Bye now.
Thank you.